You may have heard a lot of information about vegetable gardening through the summer, but I'm here to share some real nitty-gritty insights on how to grow your own food through extended periods of high heat and drought. Summers in Wisconsin, North Carolina, or Texas will vary widely, and the crops that grow best will differ just the same. And how hot is too hot? I found out in June, and the results were surprising. Let's dive into the 5 summer garden lessons I learned the hard way. What's up, everyone? It's Scott from New Garden Road, always out here to inform, inspire, and to elevate you. Encouraging biodiversity and restoring habitat is my mission, one garden at a time. Tip number 1, ideal summer crops will vary according to your location. In my Austin, Texas garden, the champions of summer are southern peas, lima beans, long beans, sweet potatoes, okra, Malabar spinach, and malokia. But that may be quite different than what you're used to. For instance, in Wisconsin, you can grow tomatoes, broccoli, peppers, and spinach alongside one another. That's just how the growing season works. Cool season crops and warm season crops. It's just not something that we could do here in Texas. And in North Carolina, you're likely to grow loads of squash, green beans, and some beautiful tomatoes. So you just have to remember this and adapt what you're going to grow from one region to the next. If you're like me and you move from one part of the country, such as North Carolina to Central Texas, you may not be able to grow the prize-winning tomatoes that you were dreaming of. But there are plenty of other nutritious vegetables that you can grow in your garden. Lesson number 2, extended periods of high heat will inhibit growth and pollination. Did you know that pollen can be rendered sterile during extended periods of high temperatures? And that is likely why your spring planted tomatoes won't continue to set fruit as the summer starts to heat up. Although the specific temperature will vary from one plant to the next or between varieties, essentially once you get to about 95 degrees for several hours, that's the point at which plants are going to have a difficult time pollinating, whether or not they're dependent upon pollinators or they're self-pollinated when pollinated. With 68 days of triple-digit temperatures so far this summer, it's no wonder some of the crops in my garden haven't been able to set fruit. I was really excited about a first planting of baby corn, and it looked beautiful. It started to tassel, produce the silks, and I even went out there in the morning to tap on the stem in order to help it pollinate. You know, I planted them in blocks that's supposed to help these wind-pollinated plants set some really full ears of corn. The case was not so when it came to harvest time. I tested out a couple of ears, and there was very, very little pollination. I'm talking about maybe a few kernels on each ear of corn. I decided to just let them stay in the garden and dry on the stalk. That way I could save some seeds for growing next time. Southern peas or field peas have long been regarded in my garden as one of the toughest crops that you can grow. So I was really surprised when it came time for them to start flowering and setting peas, they just didn't. Melons were another planting that I had to do very poorly throughout the summer. 2 varieties of cantaloupe and some watermelons just didn't set fruit at all. I did see some flowering, I saw some pollinators, but I tell you this, I went out to hand pollinate some of my watermelons early in the morning, and I know I got good contact with the pollen, but I didn't have anything set up. And that's the point when I really started to do a little bit deeper research into how the heat and extended periods of high heat, I'm not talking about 85 or 95 degrees, I'm talking about 105 every day for several weeks, can inhibit pollination for fruits and vegetables. Here's tip number 3, employ shade cloth early in the season. Whether your forecast is for a hot, dry summer or you're about to head into a heat wave, go ahead and take some action before things heat up. I really don't know why I waited so long in my garden, but I did, and by the second week in June, we were cooking. While plants are able to rebound from their initial stress, they will be set back. Shade cloth can have a significant impact on plant growth and development. Even though I didn't put my shade cloth out early in the season, I did deploy it later on, much later than I should have in the first place, and I did see some marked improvement, but it took some time, and the foliage that was damaged was damaged. It's not going to improve when it turns yellow or brown. You can cover your plants all day with a 40% shade cloth. I recommend building a structure. I've got a great video on how to build a hoop house. You can utilize that for your shade cloth or any type of cover for the garden. But also, if you have some southwest sun that's really searing, you can use a higher grade shade cloth such as 60% and create a shield, or you can even create a buffer when you have reflective heat coming off your house. So just a couple things to consider there, but make sure you have some shade cloth on hand. Here's tip number 4. Add more mulch when you think you've added enough. 3 inches is the minimum recommendation for mulch in the garden. Allow things to settle in, maybe make a second pass and add more mulch. I really like pine straw, and this is a really fluffy material, so I'll notice after about 3 to 4 weeks it'll settle down and I can go back and add some more. And this helps the soil retain moisture, but it also helps the soil stay cooler, so the roots of the plant and where a lot of the biological activity is taking place will be protected by that layer of mulch. Make sure you're observant in the garden and monitor your plants for stress, but just like the point about the shade cloth, make sure you've got that mulch in there from the get-go. Here's tip number 5. Consistent use of liquid seaweed helps plants adapt to the stress of summer. Seaweed supports resiliency in plants, and it plays a role in stress relief. It offers chelated nutrients, organic acids, and nutrients for beneficial microbes. I like to employ weekly foliar applications of seaweed throughout the growing season. I really just feel like this gives them a shield. It helps them be more supported. They are able to absorb some of those chelated nutrients into their leaves, and when you apply this on a regular basis, you're building their ability to cope with stress, adapt to the growing conditions, and that can help them persist. When the weather changes, when things get a little bit better, they'll pop back up and they'll be able to produce for you. In Austin, Texas, we had the hottest June and July on record. That's saying a lot because I have gardened through a lot of hot summers here, and while August wasn't necessarily a record breaker, it was the 8th hottest on record. So top 10, not too shabby, all adds up to a really hot summer. And furthermore, there was not a whole lot of rain. We got a couple of tidbits in June, and year to date we're about 5 inches below our yearly average. So that's not easy on plants either. And I think it's worth mentioning, if you only have municipal or city water to water your garden with all summer long, that water is being treated so that it's safe for you to drink, and it does that by reducing the amount of active biology, bacteria in the water. Those are some of the things that plants and soil need. They need beneficial microbes, bacteria, and fungi. That's how the soil food web comes together. So when you apply city water, you're diminishing some of the life in the soil. We might not have another option, so that's what you have to water your plants with. If you're able to invest in the largest capacity rain tank that you can, then when it does rain, if the rain is few and far between, you're capturing as much as possible, and that can be the water that you grow your food crops with. Maybe I should start over. And your dog finds something. Why? Always something going on around here. Now check out more awesome gardening videos on my channel. Like this video and follow New Garden Road for weekly content. You can grow your own food. Keep it organic.